I used to think there's no such thing as destiny. Everything is either random or the result of the choices we make. I still do, but some coincidences are just too mind-blowing to ignore. One that piques my interest is a biblical prophecy hidden in plain sight. You won't find it in a particular book or chapter. It's not some secret parable scholars and rabbis missed. I'm not even sure if it means anything, but I'll let you be the judge. Tell me if you think this prophecy I discovered several years ago has some significance. But before that, do me a favor and smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to get updates on my latest uploads. Now, you're probably curious as to why I would be interested in even opening the Bible if I didn't believe in things like destiny or God's master plan. Well, as you may have guessed by now, I was raised a Christian. We had a bunch of Bibles lying around the house. I was a devoted believer with plenty of free time, so I read one from cover to cover. But that's not how I discovered this prophecy. You see, in 2009, a movie called 2012 was released. It was one heck of a film, one of the best box office hits I've seen, and it made a lot of money. It was also controversial, as it sparked some really crazy conspiracy theories at the time. But of course, even if it was based on a genuine prophecy, it's just what it is, a movie. In fact, nothing cataclysmic had ever happened in 2012. We waited. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this video right now. It was as dull as any other year. Anyone who took it seriously and sold their fortune to live in a cave in the Himalayas surely regretted their decision. And those who lived to tell its falseness today must be thinking, it probably meant 2021, if you know what I mean. Anyway, while all that was happening, I wondered what the number 12 meant in the Bible. I learned from our mini Bible school at church that numbers have meanings. For instance, 1 means union, 2 means companionship, and 3 means Trinity. Then there's 12, which means God's perfect government, our preferred size and composition of his body or council. Jacob has 12 sons. Jesus has 12 disciples, and so on. Even ancient Greek religions have an almost similar application of the number 12. There are 12 titans in total. Hercules carried out 12 tasks. Ancient cities were grouped into 12 and called Dodecapolis, and so on. I was going over all these facts when I got curious about what other less popular faiths and cultures say about the number 12. By less popular, I mean not predominant worldwide. The Mayans, for example. While at it, I had a shocking realization. The film 2012 was not based on the number 12. Instead, it was based on the ending of the Mayan long count calendar cycle. This cycle is composed of 13 periods, called Baktun. Each period consists of 144,000 days. It started some 5,120 plus solar years ago and was supposed to end on December 21, 2012. Whoever made the film got the idea that the world might end in 2012 from that historic event. And that's how the number 12 got mixed up in my own little conspiracy theory. But for some reason, my curiosity didn't wane, because you see, there are many 12s in there. December is 12. 21 is the reverse of 12, and apparently, 2012 has a 12 in it. I know I'm speaking like a true conspiracy theorist at this point, but hear me out. If we go back to the Christian numerical interpretation, 12 means perfect government, which may also be interpreted as the completion of something. Somehow, I couldn't help but think, there's a connection between the two. So, I decided to go down the rabbit hole and see if I could find anything. Now, when you think of prophecy, the first thing that comes to mind is the book of Revelation. That's where most Christians would go if they want to know what the Bible is telling us about the future. And yes, the book of Revelation is a book of prophecies. But it's not the only book of prophecies in the Bible. The original Bible has 66 books. These 66 books are divided into two parts, the Old and New Testaments. Each part is further split into several classes, each representing the message the books have in common. My theory is that somewhere inside these books lies a secret message that has to do with the number 12. It's crazy, I know, but figuring it out wouldn't hurt, so I gave it a shot. When dealing with a prophecy, common sense would tell us that the books to look at are prophetic books, so that's what I did. Based on those divisions, I decided only to check the prophetic books of the Old and New Testaments. These include Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, and Revelation. If I'm right, the secret prophetic message lies within the 12th verse of the 12th chapter of each of these books. If a book doesn't have a 12th chapter, or the 12th chapter of a book doesn't have a 12th verse, we'll complement it with the succeeding chapters or verses of the next book. For instance, Isaiah's 12th chapter only has 6 verses. This means, we'll continue to the next chapter and count to the 6th verse to complete the 12-verse requirement. Each verse may mean nothing individually, but something extraordinary and noteworthy emerges when they're pieced together. Or maybe not, but who cares? Let's dive in. The first verse is Isaiah chapter 13 verse 6, since Isaiah chapter 12 only has 6 verses. This verse says, "Scream in terror, for the day of the Lord has arrived, the time for the Almighty to destroy." We're only in the first verse, yet it's already screaming the second coming and the end of times. The next verse is Jeremiah chapter 12 verse 12. It says, "On all the bare hilltops, destroying armies can be seen. The sword of the Lord devours people from one end of the nation to the other. No one will escape." The next verse is taken from Ezekiel, because Lamentations only has 5 chapters. We added the first 7 chapters of Ezekiel to complete the requirement, and we stopped at Ezekiel chapter 7 verse 12, which says, "Yes, the time has come, the day is here. Buyers should not rejoice over bargains, nor sellers grieve over losses, for all of them will fall under my terrible anger." Here, we can see that the string of terrorizing messages of destruction continues. But don't be too surprised, because these books are replete with such messages. The only difference is the verses we're reading sound almost like they're in a sequence. Next, Daniel chapter 12 verse 12, "And blessed are those who wait and remain until the end of the 1335 days." I'm not sure what the 1335 days mean. Let's save that for another discussion. Then comes Hosea chapter 12 verse 12. "Jacob fled to the land of Aram, and there he earned a wife by tending sheep." I know what you're thinking. The pattern has been broken. I thought of that too, when I got to this part, until I recalled a lesson I learned from church. You see, some names and terms in the Bible symbolize something much more significant in the present world. Jacob, for example, is famously known as the son of Isaac and a grandson of Abraham. The story goes that Jacob stole his brother Esau's birthright with a bowl of soup, earning him his father's blessing. Naturally, Esau, whose name also means Edom, was outraged and threatened to kill Jacob. So Jacob fled to a distant land, called Aram. He lived there as a shepherd and married a lovely woman named Rachel. Eventually, he decided to return to his homeland and make peace with his brother after many years. On the way, the story has it that he wrestled with God, and then God changed his name to Israel, which is significant in this theory. Fast forward to the future, John of Patmos, the author of Revelation, used the term bride to pertain to the church being married to Jesus, which he referred to as the bridegroom. In a church, a pastor teaches and takes care of members, like how a shepherd tends to his sheep. Even with these details, however, the verse still seems out of place, but it will all make sense once we get to the next one. Since Joel only has 3 chapters, we'll move straight to Amos chapter 9, verse 12. It says, and I quote, "And Israel will possess what is left of Edom and all the nations I have called to be mine. The Lord has spoken, and he will do these things." Do you see what I mean by make sense? The previous verse was meant to create a premise for the succeeding verses. These 2 verses only meant that Israel once fled to Aram to escape his brother Esau or Edom, built the church and created disciples. Then, Israel will return to Edom to conquer it and the rest of the world. It is a well-known prophecy throughout the Jewish and Christian faith that Israelites will return to their nation before the end of days. One of the Israelites' most prominent traditions is their pilgrim back to their homeland after 70 years. Both 70 and 12 symbolize the perfection of divine order, meaning the tribulation prophesied countless times in the Bible may happen after one of these pilgrims. However, this is probably just a Barnum effect, and I could be over-interpreting the symbolism of the scriptures. Or maybe not. What do you think? The symbols involved mean precisely what is necessary to make sense of the verses, so it's probably significant. Let's move on to the next verse. Micah chapter 7 verse 12. People from many lands will come and honor you, from Assyria all the way to the towns of Egypt, from Egypt all the way to the Euphrates River, and from distant seas and mountains. This verse speaks of what might happen after Israel is done possessing what is left of Edom. The relevance of this verse appears to be supported by Zechariah's vision in chapter 1, verse 12, in which he says, "Upon hearing this, the angel of the Lord prayed this prayer. O Lord of heaven's armies, for 70 years now you have been angry with Jerusalem and the towns of Judah. How long until you show mercy to them again?" This is where the number 70 becomes significant in Israel's history. Zechariah confirms the near end of sanctification or the spiritual perfection that God has set in place. The gathering of the Israelites back to their homeland after this process, as Micah predicted, has been known as a precursor to Christ's second coming. However, even though Israelites are God's chosen people, Jesus deliberately said in Matthew chapter 8, verse 12, "But many Israelites, those for whom the kingdom was prepared, will be thrown into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." You're probably wondering why we're quoting from the book of Matthew, which isn't a prophetic book. Well, Malachi only has 4 chapters, meaning we don't have a choice but to cross over to the gospel. Even if we've taken it out of a non-prophetic book, it still sounds like a continuation of the last verse. And this chapter of Matthew isn't even about a prophecy. It's just that tiny portion that has some prophetic message in it. What are the chances that we'll land exactly on that portion? And then we get to Revelation chapter 12, verse 12. "Therefore, rejoice, O heavens! And you, who live in the heavens, rejoice. But terror will come on the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you in great anger, knowing that he has little time." Again, this sounds like a fitting continuation of what Jesus said in Matthew. Doesn't it? And the ending part, knowing he has little time, may refer to the ultimate judgment, which will take place after the tribulation period, which is such a fitting end to the message. Now, let's piece these verses together to see the entire message. However, note that I'll tweak the parts with symbolism, such as Jacob, bride, Esau, and sheep, to make it more readable. The message won't change anyway, just the denotations of certain words. Are you ready? Here we go. Scream in terror, for the day of the Lord has arrived, the time for the Almighty to destroy. On all the bare hilltops, destroying armies can be seen. The sword of the Lord devours people from one end of the nation to the other. No one will escape. Yes, the time has come, the day is here. Buyers should not rejoice over bargains, nor sellers grieve over losses, for all of them will fall under my terrible anger. And blessed are those who wait and remain until the end of the 1335 days. Israel, or Israelites, who fled to the land of Aram, away from Edom, and built a church through discipleship, shall return and possess what is left of Edom and all the nations I have called to be mine. The Lord has spoken, and he will do these things. People from many lands will come and honor you, from Assyria all the way to the towns of Egypt, from Egypt all the way to the Euphrates River, and from distant seas and mountains. Upon hearing this, the angel of the Lord prayed this prayer: O Lord of heaven's armies, for 70 years now you have been angry with Jerusalem and the towns of Judah. How long until you again show mercy to them? But many Israelites, those for whom the kingdom was prepared, will be thrown into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Therefore, rejoice, O heavens! And you, who live in the heavens, rejoice. But terror will come on the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you in great anger, knowing that he has little time. Some of you may think this applies to any chapters or verses, much like how the horoscope applies to everyone, and I'm only seeing what I wanted to see. Well, I also considered that, which is why I tried other numbers. I tried it with 11, and here's what I got. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11 says, In that day the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to bring back the remnant of his people, those who remain in Assyria and northern Egypt, in southern Egypt, Ethiopia, and Elam, in Babylonia, Hamath, and all the distant coastlands. Then the next verse, Jeremiah chapter 11 verse 11 says, Therefore, this is what the Lord says, I am going to bring calamity upon them, and they will not escape. Though they beg for mercy, I will not listen to their cries. Not only are these two verses unrelated, but they also contradict each other, which means we can't tie them up. I mean, why would God bring calamity upon his people, especially when he just told them he'll get them back to their homeland? It just doesn't make sense. Let's try another one. This time, we'll use 6. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 6 says, Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. Meanwhile, the next verse, Jeremiah chapter 6, verse 6 says, This is what the Lord Almighty says, Cut down the trees and build siege ramps against Jerusalem. This city must be punished, it is filled with oppression. If we include the next one, Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 6, because Lamentations only has 5 chapters, we get this message, but each of them had 4 faces and 4 wings. Totally unrelated to each other. So you see, the rules or mechanics we set for this experiment only applies smoothly to the number 12. It can be real or just a coincidence. It's not like we haven't heard the same thing over and over already. But my thought is that it looks like the summary of everything we've ever read. And the numbers mentioned could be significant too. Either way, it's intriguing. Let me know in the comments what you think of this prophecy or if it's a prophecy at all. Thanks for watching. If there's a particular topic you'd like me to discuss, don't hesitate to mention it in your comment. See you in my next video.